This is the Power Element Podcast, episode 67. All right, my name is Paul. I produce the podcast. I'm a journeyman lineman by trade. I'm back in studio. Our guest is virtually in the studio. Coming all the way from New Zealand, we got Jimmy, aka the New Zealand Lineman. Jimmy has a great message, shares insight on being a lineman in New Zealand. Get a little rodeo talk in there, and Jimmy shares some fun facts about New Zealand. It's a good time. All right, get to the show, but first, our promotional partners. First up, Milwaukee Tool. Since the company began in 1924, Milwaukee Tool has led the industry in developing innovative solutions that deliver increased productivity and unmatched durability for professional construction users. Head on over to MilwaukeeTool.com or at Milwaukee Tool on Instagram for the latest and greatest. Total Safety Supplies and Solutions. Total Safety Supplies and Solutions is your one-stop shop for all your job site tools, PPE, garments, rubber goods, testing, and more. With locations spread across the United States, you can expedite and simplify your day-to-day needs with a vast assortment of trustworthy services and solutions. Visit TotalSafety.com. We are your preferred tooling, supplies, and service experts. Once again, head on over to TotalSafety.com. High Voltage Industries, the biggest brand on Instagram, showcasing all aspects of the high voltage industry. These guys have been working for nearly 10 years on showing the world what we do and how the industry gets it done every day. Check out the Instagram page at highvoltage_industries, and they have some of the best merch in the game at highvoltageindustries.com. Use promo code PowerElement to get 10% off your 10% off your order. They just got some beanies in. They got some socks, shirts, all kinds of swag on and off the job. Check it out. All right. A few additional partners. Klein Tools, always helping us out with our Crew of the Month. Working out the Gelco Eyewear. Use promo code PowerElement for 15% off at checkout. Buckingham Manufacturing. All right, music is provided by Daniel Sanchez. I'll put his info in the show notes. Special thank you to Lineman Mama, High Voltage Commando. All right, do me a favor. Ensure you're following us on this platform that you're listening on. Be sure to like the show, share the show. Really appreciate it. Only thing I'm going to ask you, and it's a good favor. Thank you. All right. Last but not least, I want to thank the entire Sturgis, California workforce. Without you, this podcast would not be possible. All right, let's get to the show. The Power Element Podcast, episode 67. Enjoy the show. Many people think they lack motivation when what they really lack is clarity. It is not always obvious when and where to take action. Some people spend their entire lives waiting for the time to be right to make an improvement. From the #1 New York Times bestseller, Atomic Habits, over 4 million copies sold. Written by James Clear, Chapter 5. I got the hardback of the book. Got the Audible too. Listen to that Audible a few times a year. Might want to be on your list as we roll into 2025, kind of reset. All right, going back to that paragraph, I want to ask a question to our guest. Have your goals and path always been clear? Jimmy, what do you think? You hear me, Jimmy?
Yeah, good morning. Glad to be here.
Good morning. Yeah. What do you think about that quote? I asked that question. Have your goals and path always been clear in your life?
Not always. I think sometimes, you set a goal or you've got a goal, but you don't quite know the pathway, and the pathway reveals itself, as you're traveling through to get to that goal, and that goal may have many different paths you might have to follow.
And more recently, have you found that to be a little easier, that path, that the approach to goals?
Yeah, of course. I think everyone, when you're trying to achieve anything, I think and it sounds really cliche, but the hardest journeys when you look back are always the most fulfilling in the end. That's the way. When you look back on anything you've done in your life, it could be anything. At the time, it might seem really hard, and then when you look back and you go, "Oh, I actually learned a lot from that."
I think the Modern Wisdom podcast, they say it the best is you live life forward, but you learn in reverse. We learn from, our mistakes and how we go about it. And to your point, I don't think that's a necessarily bad thing. I think maybe it's a good learning thing, but I think it's a unique perspective too. So
yeah.
Cool, man. I'm happy you joined us in the morning. This is kind of unique. You might be our first time traveler as I'm sitting here Wednesday morning and December 11th, and you're already December 12th. Tell us a little bit about that. Where are we coming in from?
I'm in New Zealand, in a place called Hawke's Bay, so North Island of New Zealand. New Zealand's got two islands, two main islands. So Hawke's Bay, and then where I live in Hawke's Bay is a tiny little, I suppose, farming community. That's where I'm coming from, a little place called Te Kokino. So yeah, it's a real small township in the middle of nowhere.
Very neat. And a lot of our audience might recognize you you've been on the Powerline podcast with Ryan Lucas twice. You're pretty active on social media, and we'll get there. We'll talk about that. But I wanted you to kind of maybe reintroduce yourself, if you could, to our listeners about who you are and kind of what that beginning of that journey looks like for you, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no problem at all. So obviously my name's Jimmy Marinus. I've been in the industry coming up 23, 24 years. And yeah, I think everyone sort of goes, any lineman goes through the same sort of journey, I suppose. But I've been lucky enough to been exposed to a lot of different things. I've worked overseas in different countries in the UK, Ireland, Scotland, Australia, did a bit of work in Fiji, obviously New Zealand as well. So I had that lineman journey. In New Zealand's a little bit different because you do your lineman journey and then you get asked to do like high voltage live line work. Got the opportunity to do that. Obviously went into like a foreman leadership role, and then eventually became a trainer, and nowadays I manage a company with one of my best mates. It's also a lineman, and we talked about 20 years ago about doing, basically. Yeah. It's been a great journey.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
What was young Jimmy like though? What was you weren't born in New Zealand, correct?
No, not at all. I was born in the Netherlands or Holland, and my mum and dad. My dad has a military background, and my mum and dad my mum worked as like a nurse, and I think they wanted to move to New Zealand. Well, I know they wanted to move to New Zealand to get better opportunities, basically. And at the time, for Dutch people to move to New Zealand was really easy. So, easy as in like getting the visas and all that sort of stuff. Nothing's easy about moving countries, obviously, like and picking up your life and basically starting over in a different culture and all that sort of stuff. So, yeah, moved over to New Zealand. Didn't really know any English. Had to learn English on the go, basically. And
so you spoke
here.
You spoke Dutch? Is that?
Yeah, spoke Dutch. Yeah, I still speak Dutch. I was 9. I think I had my 10th birthday in New Zealand, so I've had to almost relearn it because when you're young, you're sort of trying to put everything into learning English, and Dutch sort of fell backwards, and I had to sort of reteach myself. I do a lot of reading. That sort of, because I don't have a lot of opportunity to speak it with anybody, but I do a lot of reading, and that's sort of how I keep it.
Does your Dutch have a New Zealand accent on it?
Yeah, well, I think I've got a little bit of an accent in both. So even if I speak Dutch, I've got a bit of an accent, and if I speak here, like in English, I've got a bit of an accent. So certain people can really pick it up, and yeah. But yeah, that's basically like my childhood was. Yeah, I grew up, 9 years in Holland, and then came over here and sort of did the last little bit. And yeah, mum and dad had to basically set up a new life and start again, which was, it's like I said, nothing. I take my hat off to anybody that sort of immigrates to a different country and has to restart, and it's not easy, and to make new friends and those connections, and to put your kids into school and find new jobs and all that sort of stuff, So, yeah.
What was high school? Is that a term, primary school or something, or high school?
Yeah, we have like primary school, and then you go to high school. So yeah, high school was, I think, pretty just sort of same as everybody. I got to a point in high school where they put you into like a class where they, you weren't, you're not doing that great. So kind of, they sort of given you an indication it might be time for you to leave. And that's how I basically stumbled across this job. I had a teacher that was in one of my classes, and she was really helpful. She was always trying to help me, try and find something different. And she just sat me down one day and asked what was I going to do? And didn't really have a good answer for her. So she had this newspaper clipping, and in there was a company looking for apprentice lineman. Didn't know what a lineman was. I've seen power lines, obviously, but had no idea who fixes them or what company looks after them. And she sort of explained that whole journey to me, because this is still sort of, it's a start of kind of like the internet. There wasn't a lot on the internet. So she sort of explained it and helped me write like a CV, got me ready for the interview, had the interview and all that sort of stuff. And yeah, didn't get the job straight away, but the person who they gave the job to, because there was only 3 applicants, the person who they gave the job to didn't want the job. And then the boss called me a week or so later and came around to his house and signed a contract, and that was the start of a whole new chapter, really.
We could go back. You talk about high school. Did you have problem learning or attention, or were you just kind of being a knucklehead and not really giving too much seriousness to school?
I don't know what it was. I don't think I could really understand it. So probably attention. I did well in the stuff that was hands-on. So, you do like woodwork and like metalwork and that stuff. That was fine. I had no problem with that. It was all the other stuff, when you did science and I could understand it, but I just didn't have the, I don't know what it would be, the desire, I suppose it was, to really put 100% in. And like I said, I'm just lucky that I fell into this.
I think that's where a lot of craftsmen see themselves too, is maybe there's that push for college or further education after high school, which is fine.
Yeah.
But yeah. I think your story and many others in the trade is a testament to say, there should be opportunities for different paths.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but I don't know what that push is for after maybe going to school. Is there a big push in society in New Zealand to maybe go to a college or continue education?
Yeah, no, I think it's a bit 50-50, because not everyone gets the grades, obviously, to go to like what we call it university. But I think there should be maybe a two-way system, because it can pretty much, I think you could identify the type of people that are going to go to university, and I think you can identify the people that potentially become tradesmen. And if you start that a lot earlier, because think about when you leave high school and say if you go into a trade, the last 2 or 3 years, or the last 2 years at high school, if you're not really that into high school, you could already be learning stuff that's going to help you in the trade. They could be helping you get your like driver's license. They could be helping you get all sorts of little things that would make you more appealing to an employer potentially.
Yeah, absolutely. I think society maybe found its way to deter maybe someone who didn't necessarily find themselves in that education, or in that just hitting the books, or really like you talked about, maybe the desire to go that route, and those wood shops, those auto mechanics, those trades, being exposed to them early on, I think gives you that leg up as far as once you complete high school. So for me, it was easy because I knew from a young age I was going to join the military, and I did. But I could definitely see myself detaching from. I still had good grades. I graduated with a good grade point average, but I had to work at it. And it wasn't something I wanted to do. I never seen myself going to, continue my education and sitting in front of a lecturer again, or professor, or whatever that case may be. So I knew there was an alternative route for me. So, and I think we're hearing that, Mike Rowe, I don't know if you're familiar with Mike Rowe, but he's really put a lot into giving exposure to the trades and advocating for trades to get back into the conversation early on. So I think that's great. So to each their own. I'm glad you kind of brought it up. So
yeah. Well, you said a good point there. I think like the military as well, or any of the sort of like services like that, really set you up too. Because I see the difference between my brother who joined the military. He's a lineman now as well, and it's just when I was a trainer, I'd have guys that were in the military or the Navy come through, and they just have a really different mindset to people as well that haven't been in. They're a little bit more. They don't really care about getting down and dirty and doing it. You know what I mean? I think that's a big one as well.
What'd your parents think about you joining the trade, becoming a lineman? Did they have any influence on that decision?
Nah, not too much. I think they were just, like my mum and dad are just happy, I think, especially at that time. Because I was pretty much 17 going on 18. So I think they were really happy for me to get an apprenticeship, so basically, getting paid while you learn, and then hopefully that trade takes you somewhere. But they were very similar to myself. They didn't know anything about the trade, so as I was going through it, I had to sort of teach them what it actually was. And I think, my dad is really supportive. He was there, so we'll probably talk about this later, but we had our competition, our lineman competition. He was there for the 2-3 days that it went on, and he's been pretty supportive, and so is my mum, and obviously the trade's really good because my brothers wanted to join the trade as well. So yeah.
All right. So let's jump into it. How did you adjust to the work, the heights, the ask? How had an early apprentice being trained, Jimmy? How was that adjustment for you?
It was a challenge. It was a challenge. So 17, and then the people that I worked with, I think the youngest person would have been sort of like in their 40s. So I started with a contractor, and this contractor had basically, the year that I started with them, they basically started, you know what I mean? So all their gear, they didn't have a lot of gear, and they were sort of still getting their head around what doing distribution line work was. But yeah, so my first day, he's a typical old, linesman, and the boss was showing me around, and then he introduced me to who was going to be my crew, or who I was going to work with. And I just remember the oldest guy, who was the foreman, just basically said, "You've picked the wrong job. I've got no time to train you," that sort of stuff. So I was like, wow, that's a really good introduction. And then, sort of you're trying to sort of feel your way through, but you're coming into an industry where, there's different names for everything. There's all sorts of different bits on the truck. You don't know what it does, what it's called, and they just presume this stuff, or they might show you it once and then that's it. That's all you get. So I remember that first 6 months at least was a really was hard. Like it was just so different. But I'm really grateful for it. Because without those guys that at the time, they weren't. I don't think they were treating me bad. They were just hard. I wouldn't be who I am now. You know what I mean? Had they been easy on me, I probably wouldn't have been any good. I needed people to be hard on me at that point to teach me what hard work was, and but also the right way of doing things. Because I think at 17, it's really easy if someone was easy on you to just get a little bit lazy and not really take it all in.
Yeah, I think people outside of the crew dynamic or people outside of the trade, they really can kind of frown upon the way apprentice or new guys talk to new linemen, apprentice linemen talk to. Excuse me. And there's actually a reason behind it. I think for me it was always I didn't see it as an apprentice. You feel singled out. You feel like, dang, like why it doesn't have to be like this. But then you come on the other side of it, like, what? Everyone was trying to teach me some value in hard work. And sometimes there's not time to be your best friend and pick you up. It's time to do a job. And at the end of the day, you're going to have to be trained to be a qualified, competent lineman and do the work that's asked of you. And sometimes that means, paying attention and really take advantage of the time that you have to learn and be trained by some skilled, quality linemen who understand that this is a career, and it has its inherently dangerous part to it. So I think that's neat. Did you ever feel like you wanted to quit, or did you ever just kind of second guess your decision and like, maybe this isn't for me in the early stages?
Never. Nah, because I wanted to show them. It was a challenge, So, we talked about like goal setting, and the first thing for me was to gain like their respect. It would take a little bit longer. But like training wise, for me, I had to earn it during the day in order for me to get trained on something. So at the time, being a contractor, we were doing a lot of subdivision. So we're installing a lot of underground cable. And so we would go and pull the cable into the trenches and everything like that. And then I would have to backfill by hand all the cable up to a certain level. You put like a protective strip on over the cables, backfill that by hand, put more backfill over there by hand, and then I might get the opportunity to sit down with somebody and maybe help open up a cable and do like a cable splice or a cable joint or something like that, you know what I mean? But that would be at the very end of the day after I completed all the other tasks, And so I had to get really good at doing all the sort of like labor tasks and really sort of quick at it. And then I could get maybe at the end of the day, something out of it, And that didn't change for like a year and a half until another trainee came in, and I was like, then I sort of bumped up a little bit, and then I saw them going through that exact same sort of journey. So
my advice, or not my advice, my opinion is, when you get asked that question by an apprentice or someone getting into the trade is, how do I get successful? It's like, you're really not gonna be successful. You're learning something that's pretty intense. Your best thing is to grab on the coattail of someone who you respect, a mentor that's on the crew, or someone you like the way they work, and just go through those. I would say it's pattern recognition. There's a beauty, so to speak, of, like you said, backfilling, putting the protective strip on, backfilling again, tamping, ensuring everything's laid out so that when the opportunity comes for you to terminate that component, that splice, that joint, that you're going to be able to do it. You're going to have the time, and there's an opportunity for you to do it. You have to make that part of you, part of your job, and you gotta want it too. So that's always a kind of unique conversation. Is someone getting into the trade or apprentices, you automatically look at the success, but you forget about that journey piece, that learning piece is essentially the success.
100%. Yeah, and when you get into the trade, you think, oh, it's all about climbing poles and stuff, but that's the end product. You got to get so good at everything prior to that. A lot of people You can sometimes see it in linemen, like guys who haven't had a really good, you know, not an upbringing, but their training might have been really streamlined, and that they go straight up to the pole. They go up the pole without a plan. They go up, they expect everyone to tie their tools on, but if you've had a good, grounding, you're doing a lot of watching, obviously you need to take a lot of stuff in, and you work your way up to sort of being, say, like a groundman and tying on the tools, and the best thing is always to have that tool or to have that piece of equipment tied on before the lineman even needs it, so you already know what this person's going to do.
It's funny you talk about that. The climbing is the end product, and you're totally right. When you talk about a pole, a structure located in the back of a person's property, so you're climbing, and you have to go from the where your trucks are in the front of the property to the backyard. The relief was climbing up the pole, because before that you're loading everything by hand or by wheelbarrow, into the backyard, and you're just by the time before you even got to do the work, you're like, shit, man, this is gonna be a long day, or and then you realize the quote, no wasted moves, or no trips. I remember the goal was never to have empty hands, or you're always carrying something when you go in or out of the backyard, was always kind of the goal. And you definitely learn that you're only carrying what you really need in that backyard, because that counts as weight in a trip. So very neat, man. I kind of picked your buddy Steve Lechvold's brain about this, about what he would want to ask you, and he came up with some pretty good things, and I wanted to ask you about that. I know you and Steve have a pretty good relationship online, and you guys met each other last year at the International Lineman's Rodeo, but he wanted to know, how does society treat linemen? Over here there's a financial incentive to be a lineman. And there's a quote that even firemen need heroes, and they look to linemen as heroes, but, and that's kind of society's perspective. There's a lot of, glory and gratification when a storm comes in, and, linemen get put on a pedestal in that aspect. And because of the danger and the first response, type of thing. Is the same kind of, experience equivalent in New Zealand too?
To a certain point. I think we're only really thought of when the power goes out, or when that big storm hits. Other than that, I think we're pretty far from people's thoughts. Because we had a big cyclone come through here, or I don't know what
tornado, maybe?
Gabriel. Yeah, pretty much, yeah. About 2 years ago, and it did a lot of damage, and there was a lot of people off without power for a significant amount of time. So obviously then you get a lot of recognition, because people are talking about it online, and how good the job is that the guys are doing, and all that sort of stuff. And then I think once that's sort of done, it fades to the background again. And then when there's a fault, or again when there's something significant, that brings that back up again. But every day, I think people, they would see the trucks and all that sort of stuff, but I don't think there's a lot of, people don't really think that much about it, I don't think.
Yeah.
But we're respected, don't get me wrong. Yeah.
Is the pay competitive towards other industries? And because, we're
I think it is. Yeah. I think we get paid, when you put it all into perspective, I think we get paid. I mean, everyone always wants to get paid more, but I think we get paid really well now, compared to like the States, or compared to our biggest competition in our part of the world is Australia. Obviously in Australia you get paid a lot more, but for New Zealand terms, I think we get paid really well for what we do, and how well you get looked after by your employer as well. Yeah.
We're starting to see a lot more pre-apprentices apply that have a college background, because they see the opportunity in the trade. And so you talk about our situation where you and I kind of realized that maybe going to school or continuing education wasn't our path. So we kind of knew we were going to fall back on a trade or learning a skill. But these folks that are applying now, they took a path, they realized the opportunity wasn't there, and they chose a different path. Is that kind of same too? Is there a certain type of person joining going to be a lineman in New Zealand?
No, it's people from all walks of life. So my company employs an apprentice right now, a really good dude, young guy, but he's a good dude, got a good head on his shoulders, very smart, and he could have gone to university, but he's chosen to come and work with us, and he's obviously a little bit more hands-on and stuff. And I think a lot more people are realizing too that you can go into a trade. It could be any trade, but we'll say it's lineman, and it's basically earn while you learn, and you've got the ability with overtime and doing away work and all that sort of stuff to sort of bump that up again still. And as you learn as well, your wage goes up, and at the end you don't have debt, you've got a good job, and you've got the ability to also move forward or move anywhere else in that trade. It doesn't just stop where, at lineman, you could go into so many different areas as well. There's a real opportunity there.
Kind of want to ask you about a crew dynamic, getting those kind of questions. For us in California, in order to work on primary voltage, it consists of a 4-man crew. It could be, foreman, 2 linemen, and a groundman or apprentice, or you can have an all lineman crew. But the key being the 4 with a qualified and competent observer watching the primary work. Is that kind of equivalent to what you guys have? I know you might call them a little bit different, but
yeah. But you mean when it's obviously energized, when it's hot, right?
Correct. Primary high voltage work.
100%. So for us, it's a little bit different. So your ordinary lineman can't do energized work on, say, high voltage or primary.
Yep.
What you need, as you go through your apprenticeship and you become a lineman, after you get your qualification, you basically got a cooling down period of about 2 years. And then if your employer thinks you meet the standard to become a live liner, then you have to go away for 7 weeks and first get your hot stick qualification and then get your hot glove qualification. And then once you have that, you get put into a team. And how our teams look is there's a minimum of 3 guys that are qualified, and sometimes you might have like a crane operator that could be a line mechanic, but he doesn't do anything, no hot work. He might be operating the crane to stand the pole or to lift the wires or something like that,
So,
but minimum 3 guys. Yeah.
Minimum 3. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
When you talk about that crew or the minimum of 3, when you're working in that kind of aspect, excuse me, what do you think are some of those things that can cause and create friction within a crew?
Lack of communication or being misunderstood. And a big thing is, and I'm just thinking back to what's caused friction for us in the past is, or myself or teams that I've worked on, is having different expectations as well. I always think, when you get to sort of that 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock period, and the job potentially hasn't gone maybe the way you expected it to go, and people start getting a little bit frustrated because they've got stuff that they want to do after work, and then that comes out into the job, and even the tiniest little bit, sort of starts to annoy them, and then it becomes a bigger issue and all that sort of stuff. But the biggest thing what causes friction, I think the biggest thing is either lack of communication or not communicating, in a good manner.
That's so cool. And I think I've had a hard time understanding that and realizing that. And I think the way I heard it, not to say you're wrong or going against you, is it's uncommunicated expectations. And that's whether in any relationship, crew, personal relationship, or your spouse, significant other. If you're not communicating the expectation, then you're really kind of setting yourself up for friction. And you totally hit the nail on the head. The foreman or the lead lineman could have said, by 2 o'clock we're going to have this thing clipped in, and and looking to take grounds off or whatever the case may be, and really get this line energized so they can go home. But they didn't really communicate that, or didn't do a good job of communicating that. That could lead to some friction or some hurt feelings. So I think kind of really having that open dialogue as to the plan of attack, and it's line work. Things aren't going to go smooth, regardless if you set times or not. But I think communicating is probably one of those key components, and I'm glad you mentioned it. Other side of that, what are some of those things that can create strength in our bond on a crew?
Well, this is just recently for us. So, like I said earlier, we just finished with our competition here in New Zealand, and for my company, that was huge. Like the competition in New Zealand is a lot of companies that enter are multi-million-dollar companies. They're huge. They've got 50, 100 employees. My company employs 7 guys. We're private contractors, so we largely fund it. And that experience, we were away for a week. We did all the different competing over the 3 events. So far for us, that's been actually really the best thing for us. But in saying that, we've got a small team, so it's really easy for us to I hope, and I hope this is what the guys see, and it's really easy for us to show them our appreciation, and I think that creates that tighter knit team. You know what I mean? If from the top down, people show appreciation, and then hopefully the guys work together in a team a little bit better. I think having those things to bring you closer together. You know what I mean? And I think I kind of explained that a little bit.
No, I guess you spoke. We'll get to the competition, to the rodeo here in a little bit. But you talked about just that ability to bond or do something outside of work. Can kind of strengthen too. And I think for myself, it was always doing those hard jobs, or those jobs that was really tough in the moment, long jobs.
Speaking about tough jobs, I love doing those sorts of things. Those are the ones you learn the most on as well. Like the big challenges. Everyone can change, a straightforward arm, every single day of the week. But when you get those tougher jobs and you start making a little bit of a reputation for yourself of, look, these guys can handle anything, everyone feeds off that as well. It's a little bit of competition always between linemen, we can do this, and we can do this really well, but we can do it quick as well. And I think that brings people closer together too.
I like you said, that's going to roll into my next question is, do you think the culture of one crew can positively or negatively impact the whole yard or the whole company?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. If you've got, especially if that crew is on a pedestal, like they're looked up upon, but if they're negative people, and it's really easy looking from the outside in. With certain companies, they may have over time, certain companies they have maybe a toxic work culture where if people have been at a place maybe for too long, and they start thinking that where they're working is really bad, you get new people coming on board, and then they could potentially influence those people after a little while. Those people are really glad to have a job, but if they constantly hear it's not a good place to work, when it actually is a good place to work, it sort of influences them and it carries on, and it's really hard to change that. As a company, you sort of got to stay on top of that. I think to try and avoid that, you want the best promoters of your company are the people that work for you. So you got to sort of stay on top of that.
Yeah, that was a good way to say that. I like that. Best promoters, or we kind of say influencers, and not on the social media aspect, but the influencers of positive culture, good work habits, influencers on the crew of showing an apprentice, the right way, or what the way good line work looks like, or safe line work looks like, good work habits look like too. I think those are the good influencers are good. And you could definitely feel that. I think as if you look at it from a business aspect, line work, you talk about keeping the momentum, and you want to keep that positive momentum, and like you said, that toxic culture, the toxic negative environment can really kind of limit you for procuring more work, or completing the job with a high quality. Being efficient. At the end of the day, making the company money to go in and procure more work and get more work, so you can do your job. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And everyone wants to go to work. I hope and have a good time. You know what I mean? No one wants to go to work and go, I don't want to be here today because of this, and this. I want to wake up. I want to go to work. I want to have a good day. I want to do my job. I want to enjoy the people that I work with. Now, sometimes that's really hard. It's really hard to, especially if you work with a whole bunch of people from different age ranges and different backgrounds. But it's, you've got to try and find that common ground somewhere. Because you'll have something in common with everybody. You just got to try and find it. And once you find it, then you're away.
Yeah, absolutely. Good point. All right, we're going to identify what's a little bit different in New Zealand. And I think the big one we can kind of talk about is a lot of concrete poles and ladders utilized. Is that correct?
That's right. So whenever I put something up on social media, the biggest question is always, why are these guys not? Why is the ladder out? First of all, why is it an aluminium ladder? Because people always assume that that we're doing something really dangerous. And this is coming from other linemen, but there's an aluminium ladder up there. Do they know what they're doing? Why are they not using their hooks or their spikes or that sort of stuff? But what people don't realise is that especially outside of the States, maybe, is that especially here in New Zealand, we have a wide variety of different types of poles. We have softwoods, which you could use climbing spikes on, but there's not that many softwoods. We've got hardwoods, which are too hard to use spikes on. We've got concretes, we've got steels, we've got fiberglass poles, we've got all sorts of stuff. So for us, the ladder, does all those. So that's what we use. And they're either fiberglass ladders or they're wood with fiberglass reinforced. They're not aluminium.
Do you think it's
that's the biggest one?
Do you think it's the not using the softwood because of resources, or just using what's available in New Zealand? Maybe you're probably procuring the poles from out of New Zealand, but or is there an environmental impact, like softwood's not going to sustain the elements, or is there a specific reason, or is it just, are you guys not even thinking about it that much, do you think? It's just
No, it does get thought about. So the only problem is that one is resourcing as well. So with the concrete poles, the life of a concrete pole, I would say, is around sort of 80 to 90 years, And nowadays, I don't know if you guys have to deal with EPZ, equal potential zones, when you're doing de-energized work. So our concrete poles that are made by one of the manufacturers here in New Zealand are made so you can do EPZ on them. So that's a huge advantage straight away. But one is resourcing, and one is lifespan of the pole. So softwoods, the ones that we've installed in the past, they may not have been the best grade of softwood pole, but some of the poles that I put in as a trainee are now coming to the end of their life. So you would have the same potentially in the States, where you've got people from the utilities coming around checking all the poles, making sure they're safe to climb for everyone. And if they're not safe, they put like a red disc on them, or this other crew comes around and they put this reinforcing steel. It's like a big nail almost. And so, it's sort of their life expectancy, maybe for another 2 or 3 years. But life expectancy of the pole, that's the reason for not using softwoods as much, and just resourcing, because with concretes, because there's a concrete pole factory here, if there's a big storm, they can churn out almost 100 poles in no time, whereas, to resource 100 to 200 poles and next to no time is really hard.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talk about, at the end of the day, New Zealand's a small island, so to speak. Yeah. So you're talking about if there's an emergency, Is it being shipped from across the world? And I think in the States we have an opportunity to get resources from a large the United States. There's a lot of manufacturing going on in here, and so we have a lot of resources. But when it's time to re-energize New Zealand, how are you going to do that efficiently, fast, and safe? And like I said, the concrete manufacturing poles right there in the country. You're able to utilize that too. So, and you guys are climbing the concrete pole with, is that like a hook on the end of the boot, or is a strap? How's that going on? What's going on there?
No, it's just we just put the ladder up.
Oh,
and then we just climb up the ladder and then belt in. But there's stuff changing. Like health and safety is always changing. So at the moment we can still say free climb up the ladder, but I can see that changing at some point where we would have to be attached somehow to the structure or to the ladder. But once we get to the top, there's no more. Once you get to the sort of like your working position,
sure,
you can't be unattached anymore. You've got to be attached at all times. So yeah,
and
climbing over, very similar to you guys. If you're climbing over a obstacle, you got to belt on and belt off, if you know what I mean. Yeah.
I don't want to get too much in the work methods. This is a different podcast, breaking it down, but just a few questions I wanted to bring to the audience, because obviously there's going to be a majority of people listening to this. It's going to be new, just like it is to me. Yeah. But from the ladder, you're able to do primary work, and do you have to stick or rubber glove from the ladder?
Yeah, so huge difference. So it wasn't until I went to the rodeo last year where I sort of got a bit of a insight into how live work gets done in the States compared to us. So hot sticking, we do off a ladder, but the way we do hot sticking potentially is a little bit different to you guys. Like we fully, because of the way I think maybe our network's built, we fully set up all the sticks and spaced out all the wire in order for us to change the cross arms. And when we do hot glove, that's out of a elevated work platform or a bucket truck. That's that's the biggest difference. We don't do a combination of stick and hot glove the same way as it gets sort of done in the rodeo a little bit.
Yeah.
And we don't do any hot glove work off a ladder because it's just part of the rules.
Yeah, no, same for us. Once you reach a certain voltage, and that's just locally, it changes within the country. And I know you mentioned before, New Zealand's typically it's a delta system too.
Yeah. Well, our lowest high voltage pretty much everywhere is 11 kV, so 11,000 volts, and then it jumps to in certain places at 22, and then we have we have 33,000 volts as well, which we do hot glove on. But hot sticking is something that we train, and years ago we did do a lot of it, but nowadays it's more of a you have to still train it to get the principles of live line, but you definitely wouldn't do a hell of a lot of it nowadays.
Yeah, no, and that's that's important too. I think we're seeing some material being utilized that's more environmental, more practical. And you lose those finesse of of hot sticking or rubber gloving, and that's where you gain the respect and the trust of the high voltage. So I've had this conversation too with Lineman on the podcast before, is keeping those fundamental principles of respect and building those fine skills out with this newer equipment. And that's the challenge too.
Yeah. I really enjoy hot sticking. I enjoy hot sticking more than doing what we call a glove and barrier, but hot glove. Hot sticking, and there's a little bit, you really got to work out where all your sticks go, how to displace all that wire. I'll send you a video of one that we've done where we displaced the 11 kV and then went up and displaced the 33 and then changed all the cross arms and then brought it all back in again. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, sticking is a fine art. We lean heavily on our once again, Steve Leckvold, for the rodeo and just for these some of these poles that still might have to be sticked, is getting those old school kind of mentality or thought of how to do it, how to go about the job, or what sticks to utilize. Just because it's not as frequently done anymore, and that's not to the alignment's fault. It's just kind of where we're going with material and what that structure looks like. So,
yeah.
I know you see a lot. You're on. We'll talk about it a little bit later too. You're on social media a lot, but is there anything else that's drastically different in the United States to New Zealand that you're kind of you want to bring to attention to the audience?
Well, obviously, there's differences in. I think there's differences all over the world in the way we do our job, the safety rules, all that sort of stuff. I mean, pulling up a bit of wire here and pulling up a little bit of wire in the States is always going to be the same. It's just there may be different processes, maybe a little bit of different tooling. So health and safety will always be a little bit different. I think you guys have, as opposed to us, I watch a lot of the stuff online. You've got some really good companies developing really good clothing. I think, we don't quite have that yet. Our clothing is really, it's kind of like one size fits all. Everyone pretty much looks the same. I've tried to, and I have bought stuff from the States for my guys, and then brought it back here. And then because people they're not quite really open-minded just yet. They're used to seeing everything one certain way. And so I bought some fire retardant jeans in for the guys because I thought they would be better wearing and more comfortable than what we currently have. But then, if you get a person that isn't open to that, even though they're not breaking any rules and actually the cal rating on the jeans is higher than what we have, it's just different. They'll somehow find a way of, oh no, it's not good enough for what we do kind of thing. So I think in time, as hopefully New Zealand companies start looking towards other companies and what's being developed, and we can get some more comfortable lineman, like made for lineman, stuff that we wear. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good point to make. Is it's not a one size fits all when it comes to clothing and what that looks like. I had a hard time adjusting to the Gen 1, so to speak, of fire retardant FR clothing, and the way I sweat and the way it dried, I would get a rash, and it's just a heat rash, and it's not fun. A lot of chafing going on throughout the day. It's not a good look. And then you realize you can advance or kind of minimize that with different products and kind of finding what's unique to the individual. Us at Sturgeon, California, and other companies probably do it different too. You get a variety as long as it meets that requirement or that standard that's regulated within our jurisdiction. Then we have a few options. Someone's going to want a pullover FR. Someone's going to want a button up. Hey, as long as your requirements and you're good to go, whatever makes you happy. Let's just say, we'll speak hypothetically here. I'm going to go over to New Zealand and go work. What do you think is the biggest adjustment that linemen face when they go work in New Zealand? What's that big adjustment look like?
Well, I think like me being overseas a few times, working in different places and seeing other people coming over here, the number one thing you got to do is obviously don't lose what you know, but come in with an open mind, because a crew gets a little bit tired sometimes of hearing, oh, this is how we did it back home. This is how the rules are a little bit different and all that sort of stuff. So first of all, open mind, and how it would look for you to come in. At the moment in New Zealand, a lot of companies are looking for linemen. You can't get, it's really hard for us to get, really good skilled labor. The biggest difference is obviously the number one would be getting used to climbing off a ladder. For me, getting used to, I did spike work, hook work when I was in the UK. It was a huge thing to get used to. I think I'd be a baby, just like anyone starting out in the job. You take a few steps, slide down. Got to learn how to lean out again. Got to learn body positioning and all that sort of stuff. Well, it's the same thing that happens when you're on the ladder. You got to refine your working position. You got to refine what is comfortable for you, because climbing a ladder and climbing with spikes is different. Yeah. Everything else will be the same. Like I said, if you can operate a grip in the States, you'll be able to operate a grip here. If you can pull wire up there, you can do it here. If you can compress a sleeve here, you can do it. That's all the same. It's just the subtle little differences.
Sure.
Yeah.
Is there a requirement so we have to have a classification A to drive the trucks, anything with air brakes? Is that the same for you guys?
Yep. Yeah, you got to have your, just for our normal line trucks, because I think that's the biggest difference too, is we have our truck setups are a little bit different. You guys use digger derricks normally with an auger on them, and then you guys have got like really big bucket trucks. And that's because your network is designed and built a little bit different. Our trucks and what we use is a little bit smaller, a little bit more compact. A lot of four-wheel drive trucks, because we have a lot of terrain that requires four-wheel drive, and we use hydraulic, like, I don't know if you guys have seen them before, but like pail finger cranes to stand our poles and all that sort of stuff. So
what's it called?
It's a brand of crane. It's called a pail finger.
I have to look that up.
Yeah.
Can you spell that?
I can send you a photo. PALFINGER.
Pale finger. Interesting.
Yeah. Well, pail finger, it's basically because it's like the crane kind of looks like a finger, But we have that type of crane on our what we call line trucks, and they stand the poles, they pull the poles, they transport the poles. They have all our ladders or like gear on it normally, and then we have our dedicated bucket trucks and all that sort of stuff. But I'll send you through some photos, because that's also quite a big difference. And you need what we call like a class 2, or depending on the weight of the truck, you might need a class 4 license. Yeah. Do
you see a lot of linemen from different countries coming to come hang out in New Zealand, or?
Yeah, we've had I reckon the last sort of 10 years at least, we've had like an influx of guys from the Philippines, and companies these days, they even go over to the Philippines now and sort of like hold seminars and interview people to make sure that they are the right fit. We've had an influx of people from South Africa, and then obviously there's always people from the Pacific Islands and stuff that come to New Zealand as well. You might get the odd person from, say, like England come, or I think I've bumped into a person from Canada before. I've never bumped into anyone from the States yet. But, those are people that sort of want to come over for more of a working holiday, whereas the people from the Philippines and the people from South Africa, they come over here to basically restart a new life and maybe eventually go home again. But yeah, most of the time is to restart their life. And they're like, again, people take a little bit of time to adjust, because the rules may be a little bit different back home, and the way you do the work, like I say, with the climbing and stuff, may be a little bit different. So it normally takes people at least a year to sort of get their head around what's required here. Plus you have to resit part of your qualification, which isn't too bad anyway. Normally it's just a 2-week course to just get your New Zealand qualification.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Kind of last question, and I just kind of thought about it on the fly, is you mentioned you had lighter trucks, but you have concrete poles. How does that, is the third party delivering the truck in the pole in a bigger truck, or is it segmented to be distributed on that trailer, or a little bit to facilitate that drive? That's got to be a heavy pole.
Yeah, it is. So depending on how many poles it is. So if I've got a job coming up which just got like 40 or 50 poles. So obviously a truck with a big trailer will drop. I think it can carry 12 at a time, I think, which comes directly from the company that makes the poles. But normally at the yard, if we might need 1 or 2 poles that day, we just transport them on those same trucks that I was talking about. We don't really, most companies don't really have a trailer. It just gets loaded onto the truck, and then the average pole, which is an 11-meter pole, weighs 1,300 kgs. I know that you guys work in pounds and all that. This makes no sense to you, but yeah. A pole with nothing on it, that's your standard pole, is about 1,300 kgs.
Right
So
on.
I'll have to see what that is in pounds.
I can't follow up that question, or I can't think about it, because Americans are special with our metric system or standard system. So.
Well, you got to, if you guys use softwood poles, so it would be 2 to 3 times what a softwood pole weighs.
Yeah, that's probably right. Yeah. We're kind of in that 800 to 1,300 pound, which when that equivalent, or the turning that over into kilograms, we'll save that for something else. So, all right, let's shift, man. You mentioned you are a owner or manager, however you want to look at, of a company right there, Power Lines Hawke's Bay Ltd. You said it was always a dream. Man, you got to have courage to kind of make that jump into owning a business. What was that like?
That was another challenge, and I think all this stuff, I think when you're, especially in the lines trade, I've been lucky enough to meet, a lot of good people that ended up becoming my friend, and, close people and all that sort of stuff. I was lucky enough to bump into the person that we started this company together early on, and very similar people. We've got a good similar sense of humor and all that sort of stuff, and worked together on a crew. We had a lot of good times, and I think you'd go and have a few beers together, and we'd talk about we could do this, and that's kind of like where it stayed. It's really hard in New Zealand to start this because you really do need the asset owner or the utility to sort of be on board, to feed you some work. Fast forward, after we've sort of had these conversations, fast forward 15, 20 years, we were sitting down one day and I was doing some training. I worked for a company called Mitre Consulting, which does the bulk of the training in New Zealand, both live line and new apprentices. And my business partner, Hayden, he wasn't on the lines anymore at that stage. He was he's managing a company that hires out generators and stuff for the industry. And we just happened to be talking, and I said to him, I think there's an opportunity there now, because in New Zealand at that time, and still now, there was a huge influx of work, but there was people leaving the industry, going overseas and all that sort of stuff. So there was work, and there was also a lack of people to do it. So we sort of formulated a plan, sort of identified who we wanted to approach, sat down with these people who we currently, contract to, and they were on board, and they've been nothing but supportive. They've really helped us, and we started off basically with a 3-man crew: myself, my business partner Hayden, and my younger brother, who's also a lining. And we did that first year. We had a year contract. Starting anything, it always comes with challenges and all that sort of stuff. And we sort of, starting a business where you got to pay wages, you got to pay for vehicles, you got to pay, fuel costs, all that sort of stuff, to get through that first month or two, can be a little bit stressful, can be a little bit hard. But once we got through those first 2 months and we started sort of churning out the work, it started, sort of gaining a bit of traction. And then before we knew it, because we had a year contract to begin with, our first year was over, and we got extended for another year, which allowed us to hire another 3 people, I think it was. So we grew from 3 to 6, and we started doing more challenging work, all that sort of stuff. And this year we took on an apprentice, so we've moved to 7 now. And yeah, we ended up signing another longer contract again. So I think that's sort of, I don't want to sound like full of myself or full of, but we work good, and obviously the people that give us the work trust us in order for us to, gain another year, another 2 years worth of work, if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
But it's been challenging. Like, we're coming up to 3 years worth of work. There's been all sorts of challenges where the biggest one is we had one of our guys had he was driving the trucks that I'm talking about, one of our trucks with a crane on it, with a concrete pole on it, drove it into a field where we needed to drop off a pole, and it was really long grass, and he was backing back. And one of those things where, we all should have known better, where we should have potentially, that age-old thing where you should walk it before you drive it, and didn't walk it, unfortunately. And there was a big, massive hole, and as he was backing, one of the wheels fell in, and that was enough to off-balance the truck, and the truck actually sort of ended up sitting on its side. So, yeah, that truck was off the road for 5 or 6 weeks before it got fixed. So in the meantime, we had to go and lease another truck so that we could continue doing our work. And in that first week, we had it parked in the yard that we work out of. And another guy that doesn't work for us came around the corner in a truck that was carrying a digger, but he didn't realize that his tailgate on the back of the truck had been left open. So when he came around, this is a brand new truck, by the way, he came around the corner, that tailgate smashed into the cab, and that was the end of that cab. So now we had 2 trucks off the road and 2 trucks that we still had to pay for. And yeah, that so far has been the biggest challenge, but we got through that, and yeah, but I think it's all part of doing this. You do it in the good times, you do it in the I don't want to say bad times, but bad times, and the bad times teach you a lot of stuff that hopefully create more good times.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well said.
Yeah.
When you made the jump from lineman working day-to-day role, and then you took that title as a business owner, what did you realize you had to improve on to have a successful company?
Well, there's no days off. That's not that I've been a person that has a lot of days off anyway, but even more so now, you sort of got to turn up every day. You got to obviously treat the people that work for you, with respect. And I've tried to do that, whether I was a lineman or a business owner. But obviously, with a business owner comes a lot more responsibility on the health and safety side to make sure that people, number one priority is that people go home safe, and you keep them safe. So that's always at the forefront. That's always, no matter what we do, that's always the biggest thing. People shouldn't feel pressured to do something. People shouldn't feel pressured to make a decision that they don't want to make, that then turns into something bigger. So the biggest thing is always, that's why I tell my guys is, think about the job that we're going to do, formulate a plan, and, have a couple of options, and then figure out, out of those options, which one's going to be the safest option, and also get the job done and the time that's, that we have, So there shouldn't be any pressure on anybody doing any shortcuts, and that's the biggest thing in our industry. I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves sometimes. Like I said earlier, like when it gets to that 2 or 3 o'clock period, and you want to get home, and you might have something at home, you start thinking, I need to get home, and I won't do this test, or I'm just going to I'll do this, and you'll get away with it so many times until you don't, and then all of a sudden you got to stay at work longer anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a hard lesson. Hard lesson learned, and I think once you have a clear understanding of that the shortcuts don't really save you time in that long run, and they do increase that risk.
Yeah.
I heard a quote, I think it was yesterday on a podcast. It says you build a brand or a company by drops, but you can lose it in buckets. You talk about those good things and you talk about just grinding to get those next contract for a year and two. And, we previously before recording, I obviously don't run a company or have any say in that, but, we referring to this podcast is episode 67, which this will be, I feel like we just started across the start line. Like we're just understanding what a podcast like this looks like, but then you can definitely just lose your business or company in tied up in a bad incident or bad decision made and how hard that is. Do you have anything to add to that?
No, it is exactly what you said there. Like you could be successful for that first year, and success obviously looks, it could be different. You could do all these jobs under time, no health and safety issues, have really good staff and build up this real good, repertoire of, a good name and all that sort of stuff. And like what you're saying, and then you have a sort of like maybe one really bad incident where everything goes wrong. That whole year is out the book. It doesn't matter. And that's why people always say you're only as good as your last incident or your last accident. And that's not to say that I've had lots of incidents and accidents, but they've always been learnings. And I think I think everyone's had those. Every lineman, every tradesman's had either near misses or accidents or stuff that they shouldn't have been doing. And hopefully you learn from those things and you can pass those learnings on to somebody else. And then it's up to somebody else to take that on board, because I think we in our industry we have sometimes people don't always listen. They actually have to do it and experience it themselves as well.
Well said.
Yeah.
A couple last questions and we'll shift to a little more rodeo talk. But wanted to ask you, how do you manage having a big vision? Being a business owner, you have to have a vision and a plan. And being a contractor in construction is not always the easiest place to fruitfully live out a vision. But how do you manage that and lead?
I sit down with Hayden, my business partner, and we have we obviously have a vision for the company. We have short-term ones and long-term ones, and then goals. But again, a lot of the goals and a lot of the visions are up to us as well, because we've got to obviously work hard in order to create a good name. But then you'll also require an opportunity to make it happen as a contractor. So our biggest one at the moment is we contract to one network owner, and we're trying to find, we need to find that other source of work now in order for us to grow. So that's what we're busy doing basically is we've now got a little bit of a brand. We went to our rodeo, our competition, which gave us a lot of exposure. And now we just need to build on that and start knocking on some doors and have some conversations. And like I said, in New Zealand, we are a small company obviously, and we're relatively known/unknown to the people that matter. And it's just convincing them on, giving us a go. We just need that one opportunity, and then we can show you what we can do, and then we'll see where that goes. But that's the vision, is we sit down. Obviously, you got to have a really out there kind of vision or goal, and then stuff that's achievable in the short term.
Absolutely, and I think personally too, that's great too.
Yeah.
Last question in this topic here, but what's been some of the best ways to show appreciation to that workforce, to the guys you lead? What's been your best way to show that appreciation?
Well, we let me have a think. We do bits and pieces. So, on the real sort of ground floor stuff, it's during the working day, putting on a barbecue, putting on some food and all that sort of stuff. Or it could be when we finish work, taking them out for a beer or something like that, and just sort of having a bit of a debrief, and just, I think that's really important, where, we can sort of come out of the work environment, go somewhere, have a couple of beers, and just, have a bit of a conversation, have a bit of a laugh. And, I think that's the biggest thing too, is have a bit of a laugh and not take everything too seriously. We try our best to sort of, and it's hard sometimes too, to sort of organise a dinner or something where the partners or wives and all that sort of stuff can come to. We've got actually this weekend, we've got a bit of a Christmas party coming up where we're doing some activities and, just letting our hair down a little bit, and again, having some fun. But I think the biggest one, and I sort of keep saying it, is that us going to the rodeo competition this year. I think that was because the appreciation, our rodeo happens during the week, so we've also got to pay the guys when they go. We put on some good accommodation, obviously the food. So I think the guys really appreciated that, and I think companies do a lot of like teamwork and team bonding, but that for us, that part there was just completely invaluable, because looking from the outside in, the whole team psyche, I think, changed after that week, and during that week, we got so much closer, and we understood each other a lot better.
What about in those early months? I mean, when you talk about when you start your company, there's not a lot of extra funds. You might be looking at just paying that bill for fuel, and
Yeah.
you don't have many resources when you're just trying to make sure that everyone has, you're going to make payroll. What about just saying, is there any power of saying, hey, thank you, man, I appreciate you for, working here and trusting me, and, you're a big part of the vision and what the success of this company is going to look like. Is there any power in that, do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I try and thank the guys every day after work. We finish a day and, say thank you, and sort of see you tomorrow. And especially if we've done, I think everyone kind of knows, again, because we work in such a small crew, when we've had a good day, and we've got like a group chat, obviously, to try and thank them in different ways. And yeah, I hope that sort of, and it must do, because, that they're still working for us. So I hope that comes across, that we really appreciate the people that work for us. And it's one of those things, without them, there really is no us either. So, we're all obviously in the business of building power lines, but we're also in the business of people, because without the people, there's no building the power lines.
That's good, man. That's cool. I'm glad you said that. And it's tough, when you're in the thick of it, in that day-to-day role, and you can't always say, hey, Jimmy, grab me this, 6-foot piece of this jumper wire. Thank you. Like sometimes that slips, say, hey, Jimmy, grab me 6 feet of this number 4 wire. Yeah. And at the end of the day, it's like, hey man, appreciate you, Jimmy. Thanks. Appreciate it. Not every, I'm not saying we gotta build this rainbow and this walking on clouds and everything's marshmallows and fruit smoothies kind of environment. But, I think the success I've seen with leadership is, showing that appreciation, that gratitude, that, hey, you can work anywhere you want to. And if you're in a good work period, like if you're in a good zone where you're working as a lineman and you're choosing to work for this company, like you're an asset too. Your craftsmanship is a value. Like there's some value into what you can offer to a company, and for a management or leader to say, hey, thank you for spending your time here. I think that's huge.
Yeah.
Right on, man. Let's shift. I definitely want to get in some rodeo talk. I met you in person last year, which was great at the International Lineman's Rodeo. I think you were a little shell shocked with the time change. But I think it was kind of cool to just see you in person. Yeah. You're a big dude, man. You got this. I mean, you look like a New Zealander, I guess. If I was gonna draw one up, So it was cool to meet you, and I don't know, just kind of pick your brain. And I knew I always wanted to have you on the podcast. It's just a matter of timing. So, Going back to the rodeo, what were some of the highlights for you of last year's rodeo? And I know you didn't make it out this year, but we can definitely kind of take that momentum from last year. And just to give you a heads up too, they were expecting the 40th anniversary rodeo, which was this past year, to be bigger, which it was in all means going to be, I think. But obviously, we ran into some hurricane issues, and natural disasters take precedent. So there was obviously resources had to be managed. So what I'm trying to say is, you didn't miss out on a bigger rodeo. I think it was kind of this. It was close to being the same of rodeo.
Yeah, going to the international rodeo last year was honestly was amazing. I loved it. I love the industry as it is anyway, but to get the opportunity to finally go over there, it's something that I was told about from when I first started in the industry. I remember my very first, we call them like module or block course that you do when you become a lineman. I remember the trainer talking about the rodeos in the States.
Wow.
And the linemen that go there and the events and all that sort of stuff. And that's around the same time. We've always had competitions in New Zealand, but at the same time, the competition that we compete in now, the national competition, was like in its first year. And I think between our competition and the rodeo that you guys have, there's little differences and stuff, but there's definitely influence from the one, from the, say, the international or the various different ones that are in the States on our one and how we do it,
Wow.
But yeah, talking about the international one, it's like, I think for a lineman, it is the like the holy grail. It is, amazing. Like obviously it's a 3-4 day event. You have those safety courses, I think on the first day. Then you got 2 days of the expo being on, and then the last day is the actual competition or the rodeo. Going to the expo is huge. Like all the different retailers and people that make equipment, and I don't know. I loved it. I loved how I didn't know how I'd never been to the States before, so I didn't know how should I say, friendly or receptive people would be, but it was so easy meeting people. People were so friendly. I met so many people and so many good people. It was lucky as well that I already had some connections before I went over. So I did a little bit of stuff for, Power Lineman magazine.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I knew a couple of the guys just again over the internet and that. So I sort of had a few people that I could talk to and all that sort of stuff. And then I'd sort of touched base with Steve and Raul, obviously because you guys were going to the rodeo, and sort of said that I was coming over there as well. And so, I didn't want to be there kind of like by myself, just sort of like watching. I really wanted to make some connections and all that sort of stuff. And what really amazed me is, one, how family friendly it is. Like when I was at the rodeo grounds, obviously the husband or the boyfriend or the family members competing, and their wife or girlfriend or parents or whatever, they're there supporting. I can't say. It's just good stuff I've got to say about it. I think it's amazing, and I'm really, I really want to go again and again, and I'd love to. The goal for me and for us is to try and put a team from New Zealand, and whether it's Powerlines Hawke's Bay or whether it's a team from New Zealand.
That'd be great, man. And I want to applaud you for that courage just to go by yourself. Shout out to our buddy Daniel Price. I know he listens to the podcast. He's from Tennessee. He literally showed up Saturday and just to watch. He made sure he saw the team. He introduced himself, and it took him around to meet Brian Wheeler. But his family was at home. He just flew in the morning and left that night. And he's like, I just want to see this. Like, I want to see it. Yeah. And I want to invite anyone who's listening to this podcast who just wants to do it. Just do it. It's You're gonna learn a lot. You're gonna meet a lot of people. I would suggest maybe a couple days rather than that one day, just to kind of get the full experience. But if you can just squeeze one day in a Saturday, do it, man. It's an opportunity that will last a lifetime, and you'll learn so much. But all right, back to the show. Is there anything you took from the ILR and you wanted to take back, not necessarily to your competition, which we'll talk about a little bit here, but is there anything that you wanted to take back culturally to either New Zealand or your company, or start talking about it within the competitions in New Zealand?
Yeah, there's a few things. That family part is huge, but also, I think that goes along with being American in the first place, how patriotic Americans are. I think a lot of places can learn from that. You guys are really proud to be American, and you can see that in lots of different ways. I don't know, we don't really. It's a little bit different. We don't have that as much, But I think that should be there. You should be proud of where you're from and all that sort of stuff. And then with the family, the family part's really easy to forget that, our families, number one, are normally our biggest supporters. And one of the reasons why we do this job is our family. And our family doesn't necessarily see what we do, day to day. And the rodeo, even though the rodeo doesn't necessarily reflect exactly what we do out in the field, it gives someone who doesn't know a glimpse of what it is that we actually do, The other one is the T-shirts, that T-shirt swap. You guys make just amazing, like awesome artwork, and again, the pride that goes into those T-shirts, where you're from, potentially, what union hall you're with or whatever, and everything that goes into that, I think is so cool. That's definitely one thing I would like to bring back to our competition, is that the teams, put a bit of pride into either making a T-shirt and we can swap, and you have something to remember the rodeo or competition by, and it's also really good marketing.
Yeah, that's great. I know Raul's going to appreciate that compliment you gave to the shirt. He works hard and he puts a lot of effort into the design, and he understands the impact it makes. I've always said we should always look about doing a T-shirt competition within the rodeo too. So, I mean, obviously maybe a little biased because we usually have a pretty highly wanted shirt. I see you got your Raiders of the Last Art back there too, and I got the Top Gun one on 2022. But yeah, I always thought that'd be kind of neat to have a competition within the shirt trade now, because you've seen shirt trade night is absolutely bonkers. It's wild madness.
Yeah,
people wanting to take the shirt off your back just to have it. So last question from where I'm at, and then we'll talk about what your competitions look like. But I wanted to see from a culture perspective, what are some of the benefits of continuing these rodeos and or competitions within the trade?
I think the benefits are untold. One, it brings us closer together as a trade, because you get to meet everyone, from all over the place, whether that's in the States or whether it is in New Zealand or internationally. It brings us closer together. It allows us to see, definitely with the expo, different tooling and all that sort of stuff. In our competition, it's not as rigid as compared to the international rodeo, where when I was watching the events last year with you guys, all your, you bring obviously your PPE, your climbing belt and all that sort of stuff, and your rope, but largely everything you need to do the task is there for you, the extension stick and all that sort of stuff. Our competition's a little bit different, where we bring all of that gear, so you'll never see, the one crew might have a completely different setup than the other crew and all that sort of stuff. So it allows you to see different ways of doing things, again, different ways of completing that event, and also the biggest thing always, I think, with competitions and rodeos, that thing on safety. So I think it always brings you up to a higher level. We had to do a lot of training on, because we'll talk about this, but like our rodeo, our competitions, like 15, 16 events. So there's a lot of stuff that you sort of know, but then you've got to do it under pressure, and you've got to do it, step by step the right way. So it really, you put that little bit of extra training in, whether that's in your own time or the company might, give you some time to do it. I think it only improves anybody that enters. Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, let's shift into let's talk about the competitions, what they look like, just to give a little more comparison and contrast to the audience about what our rodeos look like here in the States. It's typically it's a 3-man team, 2 linemen, groundmen. You're talking about 4 events, sometimes 5 events, depending on the rodeo. You're going to have a standard hurt man rescue, and that can go few different ways. You're going to have a speed climb or pole climb, just how it depends how they're wording it. And that could be done different depending on the rodeo. And then you're going to have 2 to 3 mystery events. Mostly it's 2. Like I said, mentioned there's a rodeo that we do that has 5 events. And you mentioned too that typically the rodeos provide some of the tools and the equipment, and I think that's just to kind of keep everyone on the same playing field. Sometimes there's an advantage to the equipment used because it's specific to that company or that location of the rodeo. So there's a little bit of a tactical strategy being used there. So it lasts a day. By 2:00, typically you're done and you're waiting for the crews to tally up, the people to tally up the results of the winner. So that's kind of a run through about how we do it. I don't know if you wanted to kind of explain what you guys got going on over in New Zealand.
Ours is a 3-day event, firstly, and a team consists of 3 linemen, one being like a foreman and a trainee, so a 4-person crew. And we basically start off with, when you get allocated a space in the arena, and it's basically a bit of grass, and then we build everything. We dig the hole, put the pole or poles up, we run the wire, we put we might put an earth trench in, we might put an underground cable in, we depending on the events are always changing. We also do hurt man rescue, obviously. And we have a electrical theory test. Yeah. But yeah, over 3 days, there's about 5 to 6 events on each day. They typically you get allocated an hour to do it. And then at the very end event is the dismantle. So you've got to take everything that you've just basically built, and it's all got to come out of the ground, out of the air, and dismantled and put back on pallets, basically. So it's a pretty full-on 3 days. You don't really have a lot of time because when you finish an event, you're setting the truck up and you're tooling up for the following event. So you've got a little bit of a cooling down period between the ending of an event and the start of a new one. So you don't really have a lot of time, because we don't have like an expo day. The expo days last for the 3 days, but all our exhibitors are around the outside of the arena. So you don't tend to have a lot of time to sort of like really go around. So when you're competing, you're basically, that's what you're doing. You're competing. You don't have a hell of a lot of time to go around, But it's a great event. This year was a smaller one. I think there was 9 teams or 12 teams. I can't quite remember. It was held in the North Island, so it changes year to year. So this year was in the North Island. Next year is going to be in the South Island. And yeah, there'll be a whole bunch of teams again enter. We've had teams before from Australia that have entered as well. And yeah, it's the current form of the competition. I think it's been going close to 25 years now. Like I said, there's always been competitions, but this is sort of like the equivalent of the international, Lineman rodeo kind of thing, But like I said, it's a good time to meet new people in the industry. It's a good time to meet all the exhibitors and all that sort of stuff, and a way to get your name out there.
And I think you mentioned yours kind of runs in the same date or the week after the international.
Yeah, so that's the annoying part. So it hadn't in the past. So in the past, it's always been around September, but I think with September comes a lot of uncertainty with the weather. So it's really hit or miss. It can be like raining for the 3 days and really windy, and that makes for not a great competition. Yeah, for everybody. So I've kind of recently in the last couple of years moved it to October where the weather is a lot more kind of like stable. And unfortunately, again, I think this year, or next year's one is from the 21st to the 23rd of October. I think the international might be the week prior. So I'm trying to figure out if it is possible to go to the international, but maybe with the time difference and the flights, it might not quite work out.
And your liver, I don't know if the liver can handle that. All that beverages. Is there anything? What are the pros? What do you think is kind of unique about that 3 day kind of competition?
Well, 3 days, you got to be consistent over 3 days. You know, it's really. I'm not going to say it's easy to be consistent over 1 day because it isn't. But to be consistent, because that's the key to winning, is to be consistent. You know, you don't have to win every single event, but you got to be consistent. So you got to, if there's 15, say 16 events, even really bombing in one event, could potentially stop you from, getting on, say, the podium or getting a top 3 finish. So you got to be consistent throughout. So I remember one year in 2019, we won it, and I think we only won maybe 2 or 3 events out of the 15 or 16, and there was another team from the same company that won like 6 or 7 events, and we ended up winning the overall competition just because it was, just consistency. That's all it was. So you just got to be consistent throughout. I'd say it's hard to do, but yeah, that's the biggest one.
Yeah.
Consistent.
Yeah, I think anyone who's not familiar with the rodeo, our rodeo too, you talk about consistency, but you talk about working as a team for 4 events, a 3-man team, and having pretty much 0 deductions, a flawless event. I think it's pretty remarkable. And
yeah,
I think initially, and I'll let Steve talk about this more. He's the expert, but this is my observation is initially the goal might be to be the you see that speed kind of work in, but I think there's an element to the speed, but there's more of that consistency and working together as the best team winning, and the best team that performed that day is unique. And I think that's the way, it's a way to kind of highlight, it sounds weird, just the best team, but I think the best team wins that day, and that's intentional. So I don't know if that made sense, but anyways.
Yeah. Like I said, it's it's so hard over 3 days as well. Like, you might think you're doing, and that's the difference too with 3 days. Here you have no idea how well you're doing or how bad you're doing over the 3 days. You don't know until the very end. You know what I mean? You might think that you're doing really well, but the judge has picked up something, that you've missed or hasn't gone quite right, and that's part of being in a competition. You might, on the night that everything gets unveiled, you might feel a little bit hard done by, but you got to offer up the points in order for the judge to take them away as well.
Yeah. Very cool, man. I think ultimately we talked about just being competitive in nature as a lineman. Typically we fall into the class, the type A personality, very, very default aggressive type personality. Not to say that everyone is that, but a majority of maybe linemen can kind of fall in that category. But I think these competitions and these rodeos, they really keep the fighting spirit of that lineman spirit alive, and it's allowed to be expressed and showcased on a stage, whether it's over 3 days or it's 1 day at the International Lineman's Rodeo. I think it's a great way to just promote our trade, promote that teamwork mentality, and really see and really acknowledge hard work and the dedication it takes to be that top team at the end of the day. So,
yeah.
All right, kind of want to shift here. I appreciate you kind of taking us through and promoting your competition. Hopefully one day we can get a team from the States over there and have a go at it. So it'd be kind of neat. But
that's the ultimate goal, man, is to get over there. And it's not, like I said before, it's be impossible for us to compete at the highest level because it's so different. There's subtle differences in what we do, but in order to get a team from New Zealand to just be there and go through the motions of the different events and be part of that, that whole experience would be the win in itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do have to say that if at some point a team definitely from the States does good, you still have to invite us the next year. I always laugh at when we go to Canada. We've had success in Canada. This last year, NMAX at this NMAX rodeo that Surgeon Electric California team won, and I joked to one of the guys there, was like, "Hey, you have to invite us next year too. Don't not invite us because we won." He's like, "No, absolutely. Like it forces the team winning, not from here. It forces us to do better and want to get better." I was like, "Oh, that's perfect. So that's cool."
Yeah.
All right, cool. I want to shift. You're pretty social. You're pretty active on social media. You got Instagram, LinkedIn. What do you like about social media and highlighting our trade on that? What's the draw for you there?
Well, I'm proud. First of all, I'm proud of what I do, and that can be people perceive it in different ways. Like I'm just proud of. I've always loved the trade. I'm proud of what I do. Sometimes maybe people can see that as being arrogant or whatever like that, but it's just that I'm proud of our whole trade. Let's put it like that. I like to post on social media because one, I like to see how others do it as well, and hopefully there might be a person somewhere else that sees how we do it and goes, oh, actually there's a different way of doing something. They do it like this, and I like to have an open mind about everything. I've never been the type of person that looks at a photo, are they doing this wrong, or they're not wearing this, or I look at it because you don't know what the rules are in that country or wherever they're from. So the rules vary so much across the whole world. But I use it as a tool to learn. I use it as a tool to gain exposure for our industry. Some really cool people in our industry. There's a lot of people that are coming up and learning. And we've got this great tool, the internet, social media. Nowadays, like when I started in the trade, and potentially when you started in the trade, couldn't find anything. So nowadays, you just with a click of a mouse, you can hundreds of thousands of pictures and different people that are willing to give you some advice and all that sort of stuff.
Well said.
Yeah.
Moving forward, I want to do a better job at having discussions around mental health and mental toughness. And then on the pre-podcast call, you mentioned that New Zealand ranks high per capita in suicide. Is there any message you have to someone who's going through a rough patch or in looking to kind of come out of it and conquer?
It's a hard one, because it's not a one size fits all solution either. But I think the biggest one, and I think, first of all, I think everyone goes through a bad patch or bad patches at some point in their life, and that can be brought on by a number of different things. But, the biggest thing is if you know someone that's going through it or you are going through it, it's really hard. It's just to keep checking in with that person, keep talking, allow that person who's going through this stuff to blow off some steam. Sometimes they just need to be listened to, or and it's really hard because anyone that's really dealing with this stuff to a high, and in the really bad part, you've really got to work hard, and just listen to them and maybe take them out and show them, like there's more to life, that's the biggest part, because it sucks. It really does, I've lost friends and all that sort of stuff to this, and You always think afterwards, could I have done more? Could I have said this? Or, that's the hard part. And I hope that, I'm never involved with that sort of stuff again. I just want to not get to that point. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's easy to really say, look at it internally and say, and be selfish in the fact that maybe you think it's just a patch that you're going through, and then you realize maybe someone else in the crew is, and then you figure out locally maybe people are having depressed or could be on a bad path, and then you look at United States, you see the numbers go up, and then now we have this conversation with you and say society as a whole, even New Zealand, is really kind of seeing a lot of people struggle, and I'm probably the worst person to talk about. I have a hard time talking about emotions or feeling like I'm a good shoulder to lean on or a good ear to listen to. But at some point I was kind of like, there's nothing's changing by not talking about it or addressing it or just casually bringing it up like you and I are here at the end of this podcast. What's it going to hurt? It's only going to help and let people know that you're not alone, and there's resources and there's opportunities to kind of talk about it. And there's folks like yourself who make themselves available and have a lot of life experience too. So, great, Jimmy. I kind of want to start shutting this down. I do have a segment that's going to be kind of fun here. Pause with producer Paul. Is there anything you want to talk about or we didn't bring up in the previous topics?
Well, I think we've sort of covered everything. I think what you guys are doing is, like I keep saying it, but I think this, like with podcasts and stuff, it just brings so much exposure to our trade. And I think the way that you guys do it is one, it's easy to listen to, but it's for me, I love listening to it, and especially when you have guests on that you can sort of relate to, other lineman guests and all that sort of stuff. I think that's the big thing. Just keep doing what you're doing. I think you guys do a really good job of it. Again, not just you guys, there's other people that obviously do it as well. But yeah, for anyone, young guys that are coming up, I think you guys do a really great job of getting exposure to the industry and all that sort of stuff. And yeah, I know it's not a question, but it's I just wanted to let you guys know that you're doing a really good job.
I appreciate that feedback, man. It means a lot. And I know Raul appreciates the feedback too. And, he leads this initiative. It's through his vision that we do this in Sturgeon Lakes, California, and our parent company, MWR Group, that allow this vision to kind of be created and make an impact. And for you to give that feedback is awesome, man, too. So appreciate that. All right, cool. We're going to shift. Pause with producer Paul. I'm biased. This is my favorite segment because it is named after me. So I will continue to have it be my favorite. I think Raul is kind of warming up to it being his favorite segment too. So it's going to be the first of many, considering we have our time traveler, Jimmy, here from New Zealand. Once again, he's a day ahead, but 3 hours behind. So it's kind of cool. So once again, pause with producer Paul, New Zealand edition. Jimmy, I got some questions about New Zealand and your country of origin. Well, I guess not of birth, but of livelihood, we'll call it. So.
Yeah.
First fact is there's no snakes in New Zealand. What is up with that, Jimmy? Is that true?
Yeah, there's no snakes here. There's actually nothing here that can. There's no insects really here that can hurt you.
What?
No snake. Yeah. It's a relatively safe country, man. There's no crocodiles. Pretty much swim anywhere.
How is there no snakes or insects? What is?
Yeah. Well, there's insects, but nothing that It's not like Australia where you got like giant spiders that bite you, and there's no snakes. It's I think because it probably gets so cold in the winter time that all that sort of stuff, just wouldn't be able to survive. But yeah, that's the cool thing about New Zealand. There's none of that stuff is here.
So you can walk through. I don't know what the terrain is like, but you can walk through the brush, the brush, and be fine with it. Huh?
Be fine, nothing. Yeah.
Oh, we have a huge problem, especially in our area locally. There's, summertime when the heat, obviously, snakes and reptiles are cold blooded. I'll stop right there because I'll get on my skis, over my skis. But Yeah, they're nasty and they are vicious and they're mean and they're animals or they're going to protect themselves. So
Yeah.
when I read that, I couldn't believe there's no snakes there.
Yeah, no, there's not. There honestly isn't anything that's. Yeah, there's nothing. We don't have any of that stuff here. So
That's why you guys are so laid back.
Yeah, yeah, well, probably, yeah.
And it's December over there. Obviously, you're not that. You're still in the same time frame as us, but it's your summertime, correct?
It is summertime. Yep, where with the temperature is starting to get hotter and hotter, and there's less rain, so we're looking at going into what we call a drought. Where there's just hardly any rainfall. So all the fields, the farmers' fields, and everything like that, they're all starting to dry out, and which makes our work a lot easier because the area that I live in the wintertime, it gets really wet, everything gets really soft, and it's really hard to get vehicles and stuff into places. Whereas now you can get your vehicle anywhere, which is really good. But yeah, we'll have different, because I don't work in Fahrenheit, so we're getting to like 30-degree days, which is relatively hot when you're wearing all your PPE. And the New Zealand sun, for some reason, has a real sting to it. People don't realize how the sun here really burns you. So you really got to put your sunscreen on.
Closer to the sun in New Zealand.
Yeah. They always say that we don't have a good UV, ozone layer.
Oh, okay.
So that's why the sun here is so much more sharp. Yeah.
Well, there you go. If you're listening to this and it's December and you're covered with snow, head to New Zealand. And if you are extremely terrified of snakes, head to New Zealand and be confident where you step because there's going to be no snakes. So that is wild. Moving right along here. New Zealand has 7 times as many sheep and 3 times as many cows as people. What's going on with the sheep there? A lot of wool going on?
Well, yeah, a lot of New Zealand is obviously farmland, and a lot of sheep. And this is always the big thing between Aussies and people from Australia and New Zealand. It'd be very similar to Canada and America. So yeah, a lot of sheep, a lot of cows, but yeah, a lot of farmland. That's what it is. There's a lot of. I think there's actually only about. Might only be 5. I think it must be about 5 million people in New Zealand, and the majority of those people are in the North Island. So yeah,
is it common?
Sheep and people.
Sheep. Is that the joke? Like, if you go to New Zealand, you're a sheep, or is anything like? Is there jokes like that, or?
Yeah, there is. Yeah. I don't want to mention those jokes because they're
That's smart. Yeah. You don't want no ammunition.
Yeah.
Man, this is great. All right. No place in New Zealand is more than 87 miles or 140 kilometers from the ocean. So, that's about maybe an hour, a little over an hour drive to the ocean, wherever you're at. Is that kind of cool about New Zealand?
Yeah. Well, that's the cool thing about living on an island. And that, like, people, like when you're from New Zealand, you can never get your head around, like, say, people that live in Australia or in the States that have never seen the ocean. But you forget how big. I didn't realize. I mean, I've known that the States, obviously from maps and everything like that, how big it is, but you don't realize how big it is, I think, until you go there, and of course, now I know why. Some people have never seen the ocean because they live so far away. Whereas here, you just jump in the car and you're there. Yeah.
That's awesome. So a lot of water sports, a lot of ocean going on. A lot of ocean activities.
Yeah, a lot of surfing, a lot of diving. Obviously, fishing. A lot of people get, food, fish, we call them paua, but abalone, from the ocean. So yeah, we also got a lot of rivers and stuff like that. But yeah, obviously, like I said, there's a lot of surfing and all sorts. You sort of grow up, around the beach.
As you sit right here recording this podcast, how far are you away from the ocean? If we're gonna hop in a car right now,
I would be. Where would be my closest? Maybe half an hour.
Oh, that's nice.
About that, yeah.
Very nice. And the December water's nice temperature?
At the moment, for me, it would still be a little bit cold. I've just come back from the Cook Islands, where you could literally just walk into the water, and it's Cook Islands in the Pacific. It's an island, sort of around where Fiji and all that sort of is, and you could just walk into the water, and there's not much of a difference. But at the moment, the water is kind of, well, for me, the water is still like heating up, and you've got to do that sort of sprint into the ocean and dive in, and then you'll be fine.
Yeah, I coming 40, my sense of adventure is kind of going away as far as cold water and dark water bodies. I stay out of those. If it's not the right temperature, I just turn around and walk out. There's no reason for me to put myself in that cold water.
Yeah.
All right, moving right along here. New Zealand's national sport is rugby, but has more golf courses per capita than any other place in the world. I'm a newly, I just took up golf this past year, so there's some good golfing going on in New Zealand. Is that right?
What was that last bit?
Yeah, so New Zealand's national sport is rugby, obviously, and but you guys have more golf courses per capita than any other place in the world.
Yeah, that actually is amazing, because even where I live, like each township almost has its own golf course. So I don't know how that's come about, but it must be something, I don't know, it must be some tax evasion thing or something, I guess, because where I live, there's golf courses everywhere.
Oh, perfect. Steve and I, we like to golf. We just kind of re-engaged with it. Being veterans, we kind of teamed up with the PGA Hope. It's a program we're going through, and it's pretty unique. So I'm getting a lot of golf time in. So golf is a very frustrating sport. So very cool. Didn't know that. Fun fact, Lord of the Rings was filmed in New Zealand. Didn't know that. So. And close this one out, and I got one more question. But last little fact here is 33% of New Zealand's landscape is protected as part of the national park system.
Yep, that's right.
So a lot of
national parks in New Zealand. And that's awesome, because it allows you to, like, there's all sorts of different huts and stuff where you can stay the night, and you can, walk in, and all varying different types of terrain and tracks and difficulties and all that sort of stuff. So there's a lot of national parks, and that's the good thing about New Zealand. It's very a lot of nature and all that sort of stuff. It's very green. It's pretty cool.
Very cool. Fun fact. Last question. We'll wrap this up here. Is Jimmy? I'm going to be a guest at your house tonight for dinner. What's a meal would be prepared? I guess maybe a traditional meal that you would want to prepare me as a statesman, as I'm coming from the States.
Oh, traditional meal. It's a hard one, really, because I think these days is, again, because of like the internet, our stuff is so everything's starting to get quite similar. But if you were going real traditional New Zealand, it's something called a hangi. So it's what indigenous people to New Zealand, the Māori people, do. They prepare their food and then basically put it in steel baskets. They wrap it all in tin foil and then put it into the ground with hot stones. Cover that in normally like sacks and stuff like that, and put a bit of dirt over it, and then let it basically cook, and it sits in there for a few hours until it's ready, and it comes up, and it's normally a bit of meat, some potatoes, that sort of stuff, some vegetables. It's really popular.
Very good.
But that's real traditional.
I like it.
Yeah.
Jimmy, that's all I got, man.
Yeah.
I appreciate you.
Good.
Yeah, it's been a good conversation.
Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate you.
Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you coming on and telling your story, telling a little piece of your message. So I appreciate it, man. It's not easy to sit here for 2 hours and chat it up. I think you did great. I think it's a great message. I think you're going to inspire a lot of people, and I think the ultimate goal here is to share perspective, as linemen in different areas, and bring new ideas, and just kind of humble ourselves and realize that it's not necessarily done the same way that we may do it on a day-to-day, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's wrong or it should be frowned upon. We should be accepting ideas and kind of, make sure everyone's safe and having a good time doing it.
Yeah, definitely.
Jimmy, we'll start wrapping this up, but where can people find you? Where can people reach out to you if they wanted to connect with you, man?
Yeah, I'm on basically every social media platform almost. So if you just Facebook, just enter my name, Jimmy Marinus, I'll pop up. I run a Facebook page and an Instagram page called New Zealand Lineman. So just New Zealand and then Lineman, Linemen. If you search it up, it's in there too. So very popular group on Facebook. It's got over 5,000 members, I think, now, and equivalent on Instagram. And then obviously I've got my company pages, Power Lines Hawke's Bay. You just search them up on both Facebook and Instagram, and it's a good way of sort of, if you've ever wanted to see how we do work here, I post a lot on there, videos and photos and stuff like that, and just have a bit of a look.
Cool. Jimmy, I appreciate you, man. Great conversation.
No worries.
Thank you, sir.
You.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. Catch you in the next one.